I got my new sofa.
I was going to say, we're both in our new spaces.
Yeah.
How do you like it? It's less seats than your previous sofa.
It's the same number of seats, but it is
less backing.
It's not as much, not as wide. It's got cup holders. I don't know if you can see this. Cup holders. Oh, you can't see it. Cup holders.
I just see your crotch, Dustin.
Sorry. Well, that was a freebie.
Is that? Can your crotch hold a 16-ounce tumbler of water, or is it only a can of Pib? Don't answer that, please.
I don't know how to answer that. Even if I wanted to, I would have no idea how to answer that question.
Does it have one of those grippies that my minivan has, or is it just a straight plastic cylinder?
Are we talking about my sofa or my crotch?
I don't care about your sofa anymore. This is our first date, Dustin. We're getting to brass tacks. We will talk about Spider-Man eventually, everybody.
Eventually. Hey, look at this. I have this ceramic Spider-Man bank, and I put it on my desk, and I was like, hey, that's a cool place for my Spider-Man bank. And then the very first thing my son did upon coming downstairs is grab this bank. And I was like, no.
Oh,
and he was like, I'm going to throw it.
I'm going to smash it, Dad. I don't care what you think.
This bank. And I was like, no.
Everything precious to you is mine.
You will leave me this room in your will.
You will. And you won't have to, really. It's not going anywhere.
That's exactly right.
Can't take it with you. You couldn't take it with you even while alive.
What if your child came up to you and was like, I want this in your will for me?
I'm so spiteful. I'd be like, guess what? It was there, but I'm going to call my lawyer tomorrow. It's gone.
And what if they said, well, I'll kill you before you have the chance to call?
Any other ways you want to tell me how to live my life and my death? Sorry I'm late. Had a dinner mishap. We were supposed to be doing barbecued pulled pork today. And so I got up and I sliced up, I had like a 15-pound Boston butt. And so if you've ever tried to cut those up, first of all, that's just already difficult. So I'm just like sawing at this Boston butt with a not saw knife, just a big butcher knife. And I'm like, why can't it cut quick? Because it's not serrated.
Right.
So I chopped it in like 3 sections to approximate like a 5-pound, and I put it in the Crockpot, and it's going on. And then like around 4:30, about when I was expecting for it to be close to finished, the thing is off. The Crockpot's off.
Oh.
And like it's plugged in. It's just there's no more lights on it. And I was like, I wonder when this went off. And it was probably like 2 hours into the cook. I don't know what I did except for unplug the coffee pot that's in the same outlet, but unplug it. So I had texted my wife and I was like, we're going to have pasta and shrimp tonight because the pork's not going to be ready. So I put it on a 4-hour cook. And then I was about to sit down. I was like, oh crap, it's probably almost done. And so I turn the thing off, I drain it, and I start to try to like rip it apart. And it's like, it's cooked, but it's not tender enough to shred easily. So that's when I texted you. I was like, hold on, Dustin. And I got in there with my forks. I was just shredding it like a motherfucker, just trying to get it finished. And I didn't do a great job, but I barbecued it and I put it in a bin, and now it's cooling off on my countertop. So
gotcha.
We'll pause at some point so I can put it in the fridge. So that, damn it.
Have you seen those shredders? I want one. I haven't looked for them in a long time, but they're like, you wear them, like you slide. They look like brass knuckles, and like they slide onto you, and they have like big sharp points,
like Wolverine
and you just
blades.
Like dig into it like a badger. You're like, no.
Oh, interesting.
And it's supposed to be way easier. But I've never used one.
Well, if the damn thing had cooked for 10 hours like it was supposed to, I could have done it with my tongue, which is how I prefer to do it. But yeah, I mean, like it would have just fallen apart. It would have been a problem.
Yeah.
But as soon as I put that fork in and tried to pull, and there was resistance. It was like trying to pull apart a shoe. I was like, oh, great.
This isn't going to work.
So I did a little bit, but what I'm going to have to do is put it on a cutting board tomorrow and just slice it.
Yeah.
And we'll have to have sliders that way.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
For everybody listening who's interested in meals gone wrong.
Yes.
I guess that's... You're welcome.
There you go.
All right. You want to talk about Spider-Man?
Yeah.
All right.
It's just hard to see my little man not being my little boy all the time.
Yeah.
You know, for years, I've been taking care of this little boy. Making sure he is loved, that he feels like he belongs wherever he wants to be. He wants to go out into the world and do great big things.
Not bad, kid.
And what I worry about most
I love you, Miles.
is they won't look out for you like us.
Miles! Want to get out of here?
Wherever you go from here, you have to promise to take care of that little boy for me. Make sure he never forgets where he came from. And he never doubts that he is loved. And he never lets anyone tell him that he doesn't belong there. You gotta promise, Miles.
I promise. My name is Miles Morales. I'm Brooklyn's one and only Spider-Man. And things are going great.
Oh yeah, you were supposed to be here at 5.
All right, whatever.
Whatever?
Wow.
Whatever?
So are you like a cow or a Dalmatian?
I am the Spot. It's not funny.
Don't do that.
Miles's grades are pretty good. A in AP Physics.
That's my little man.
And a B in Spanish.
Ooh, okay.
Miles.
Are you trying
Mira,
to
eso es
kill me?
imposible.
I gotta go. All right, bye.
He's lying to you. And I think you know it.
What's up, danger?
Miles! Want to get out of here?
Oh, when? So wait a minute. There's an elite crew with all the best spider people in it?
Who's the new guy?
This is unbelievable.
This is the lobby. Miguel O'Hara. The whole thing was his idea.
What's a guy gotta do to join this spider team?
You can never be part of this.
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
Come on, go easy on the kid. He had a terrible teacher.
Peter!
Miles! Mayday!
You have a baby?
I have a baby.
I'll take it from here.
Spider-Man. I almost said Into the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse is in theaters now. Came out this past weekend. Directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. 3 directors. Written by Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, and David Callahan. Not Callahan. And we've got a lot of voice talent in here that I'll go through in a second, but it's the sequel to the 2018 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Everyone knows what I'm talking about because it was so damn good. And it's, if you never saw it, it's the animated Spider-Man, the movie with the kid.
Yes.
There you go.
There you go.
So this one was supposed to come out like in 2020 originally. I think it was.
Yeah, they kept pushing it back.
Yeah, I don't even know what the original release date was. I had it up here, June. No, that was when the work began. I think it was supposed to be 2020. Anyway, I remember it got pushed back like a full year from when I was first aware of it being a thing. So, did you see the first one in theaters?
Yes, I worked a screening of it, and I was able to see it. Yeah, when I QC'd it. That's right, because I had not seen it at the time, so I saw it later. I think I might have bought it. No, or I rented it. I did something, but I loved the first movie. I gave it 5. I was blown away. I just thought it was so good. Yep.
So in the first movie, Miles Morales is bitten by a radioactive spider. And he
surprise.
Yeah. He gains spider powers, but there's already a Spider-Man. Peter Parker is already Spider-Man, but Peter Parker is killed in near the beginning of the film in that movie. And so he is now the only Spider-Man, but there's simultaneously this plot happening with a particle collider that's bridging universes. So other spider people are being pulled to Miles' universe. And all of a sudden we've got another Peter Parker from a different universe, Peter B. Parker. Mm-hmm. We've got Gwen Stacy, we've got Spider-Ham, Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, and we've got all kinds of stuff happening. And so through his experiences with these other spider people, he quickly learns how to shoulder the responsibility of Spider-Man. And by the end of the film is a self-actualized Spider-Man. And this movie is a sequel where we learn that there is a whole like complex of spider people who not all the spider people, but a lot of them work together as like this sort of organization across
a multiversal task force.
Yeah. And Miles becomes aware of that, and a greater plot, a greater story unfolds as a result of that. So I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to spoil people right off the bat for this, because this is still in theaters. What did you think of this one?
I enjoyed this quite a bit. So in comparison to the first one, which I feel like you just have to do with the sequel, I like the first one a lot. I think I've seen it twice. I own it. I tried to watch it the night before I watched this one, and I fell asleep. So that's not the movie's fault. That is my fault.
Dustin was very tired last week.
I was very tired and still recovering from COVID and like the whole thing. So, yeah, man, so I think I've seen it twice. I really love Into the Spider-Verse, and so I was excited for this. I think I might like this one better than Into the Spider-Verse. It's tough because like they both succeed in different ways. This one, I respect the heck out of this movie. Like what they're able to achieve here is pretty staggering. Both in terms of things that were set up in the first film that you didn't know were a setup, some of which may not have been, and may have been like, oh, we could do something with that. And then some, it feels like, I mean, they had to have planned this in advance. And that's really cool. And then the way they're able to interweave both Miles' story, Gwen's story, and, the story at large with essentially two antagonists is it's crazy, because anytime like you put that on paper and everyone's like, whoa, you're doing too much, man. You're going to have to scale it back. It's never going to work. But it works. Like it's really good. So I respect the heck out of the writing of this movie. The direction is great. The visuals are fantastic. Like you think that first one is like mind blowing and it'll change the course of animation, and of course it did and has and continues to. This one just kind of ups the game, and it's like, hey, Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem or whatever, you think you're gonna ape our style? Nah, man, let's go up another notch and see if you can match this. And now, like, going back and watching the trailer for Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which again everyone was like, oh, this is aping the style of that. It's like Sony, it's like yeah, dude, it is, but they're still, like, no pun intended, miles behind this series visually. Like everything is. Disney's not putting out anything this imaginative, and Pixar's not putting out anything this imaginative.
Right.
It's crazy to me that it took a Spider-Man movie to like push animation forward once and then again.
Yep.
And so just visually it's great. The voice cast does a fantastic job. It's emotional, it's funny, it's action-packed. It's surprisingly character driven, and there's a lot of really slow scenes of people talking, which I love. And yeah, man, just the way it unfolds, I really enjoyed it. So I gave this 4.5 stars. There's a couple things that, you know, maybe we can talk about that I think could have been handled a little bit differently. But I mean, dude, I had so much fun with this movie, and it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long or something like that. And by the time this was like getting close to the end, you kind of feel like, oh, this is going to be the end. I was like, no, keep going, man. Like I'm in this. Like, just keep going.
Yeah.
And if they had just said like, surprise, Beyond the Spider-Verse is right now, I'd have been like, cool. All right, settle in. Let's go.
Right.
And I just enjoyed the heck out of it. So yeah, 4.5 stars for me. I really loved it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it's really well made, and it's certainly a worthy follow up to the first one. I still prefer the first movie. Mm-hmm. I didn't love this one as much as the first film, and that's really just a function of what this is. Like the first film felt like a complete story. It was a really great, straightforward hero's journey. And it was just really, really well done. And I have to respect that this movie is setting up a third film.
Yeah.
And that the cliffhanger ending is very intentional. I just sort of wish it had felt more complete. Although I suppose emotionally it is, because there's closure to some of the characters' choices here. I don't want to say which ones and right now, but it's hard to judge the movie without seeing the entire trilogy, I think. So I'm sure once the third is out and we've seen it, and if it's, you know, any bit as good as the first two films are, then my opinion of this will go up a little bit. It's just hard for the next 9 months. It's going to be hard to grade this movie for me, because it's like, well, it all really depends on the payoff.
If it'll stick the landing.
Because it doesn't function as a standalone film. That's my biggest criticism of it. Is I just wish it, like, because that's our criticism of a lot of Marvel movies too. It's like of MCU films. It's like, even the ones you love, it's like, but like, it doesn't function as a standalone film. But the best ones, we give the Guardians movies such high marks, and one of the reasons is because they feel self-contained. You know,
it's interesting because you can go one of two ways with a film like this. You can go the Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest route, which is like basically like functionally it sets everything up, but like very little progress is made, and by the end it's just like, and here's a cliffhanger for you, and it just feels like really out of nowhere, Barbossa's alive, and you're like, what? And then, you know, it's like, bye though, and then it's over, and you just feel like, whoa, this is really empty. Versus something like The Two Towers, where The Two Towers feels like a self-contained film while also being act 2 of a larger story. To me, this was more like The Two Towers than it is Dead Man's Chest.
Sure.
It is not a full story in the same way that The Two Towers is not a full story, but in many ways, The Two Towers is like the story of Frodo losing hope, and perhaps more importantly, so that may be the B story, but the A story is like the siege of Helm's Deep and that battle and Gandalf coming back and like this whole thing. And so this feels like it has a beginning, middle, and end, even if the end is feeding into the larger story,
right?
Because essentially you've got the story with Spot, which is what's sort of the overarching thing, and then the story with Miguel O'Hara, which will eventually, you know, I mean, we're not done with it,
right?
But and that's sort of, I think, maybe what differentiates it from the Lord of the Rings, but it certainly is driving toward a payoff, and like we're further along, and so Miles has made some realizations, and I do feel like there is some level of a character arc for him in this film as a self-contained unit. But yeah, for sure, there's plenty of room for, you know, whatever's coming next, which can lead to an incomplete feeling.
There's open loops here that will either, like, my score for this movie will retroactively go up or down based on what number 3 does, because it's just so dependent on, story payoff and story seeding is all, I mean, the movie, so Two Towers is a good example. I liken this situation a lot to the second and third Matrix movies in a way, because like that's another one where like those films came out 6 months apart. Like it was May. It was in May of 2003, I think, when Reloaded ended, and then they're like, Revolutions is coming in November, and it's like, oh wow. So the first thing I did when we left the theater was like I was trying to figure out when's the release date, and it's March 2024. All right, so it's not even a year. And we'll get this third film. So clearly they were very much made with the other in mind. These are probably produced together, much like Infinity War and Endgame complement each other so well because they were made simultaneous. They were written and conceived as one large idea. And that's fine with me. So it's weird. It's like, if you were to drop into the review right now, it might seem like I don't like the film. I love the movie. I think it's a little long. I respect a lot of what they did here. They took some time. They took some slower scenes. I was a little. I also, this was a Saturday. I woke up at 5 a.m. that morning, went running, and I had less coffee than usual before this noon screening and a light lunch. I was probably a little bit tired. So I'll grant it some of that, but a plus and minus of the art style here too was like they have so many art styles combined, and there were times where I wasn't into it. Like I really love the art style of Miles's universe, and I love what they did emotionally with Gwen's, but there were times where I was like, I feel like I'm looking at an unfinished drawing. Like it felt a little too minimalistic, to where I was just kind of losing a little bit of perspective, but that's a minor critique. There's
her world is like watercolor.
Exactly.
It's very like color is emotion and go.
Right. Yeah. It's wonderfully creative. And this is on track to be the best Spider-Man trilogy that's been made. Yeah. It's by far the most ambitious, the most creative, and the most comic book feeling comic book adaptation that's probably ever been made.
Down to like Ed's notes at the bottom of the screen, which are fantastic.
I mean, that's like you can't make a comic book adaptation that feels more like its source material than this. And I mean, I love some of the Marvel movies very much, but even those at the end of the day can feel still like Hollywood. Even though they're very well adapted to live action, there are limits to adapting something animated, illustrated to live action. You just, unless you go full blown CG. But anyways, I'm splitting hairs at this point. So I definitely recommend that people see this in theaters. I think if you love the first one, you're going to love this one. Be aware that it is a setup for a third film if you weren't already. But I agree, and I'll go into more detail, but I agree, like there's arcs and closure within this film so that it feels complete. It's more just like it's like that feeling where you finish a story and someone's any good cliffhanger, like something is unsettled. Everyone's in place for something and you want to know what happens next.
Yeah.
And the fact that you don't and the film ends can feel a little bit uncomfy, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Have a little bit of courage.
Right. It's almost akin to like reviewing a season of a TV show, but like the next season is the last season and you're trying to figure out whether to recommend the show to somebody. And you're like, well, I mean, it's good so far, but I mean, give me a year, let me see the last season, and then I'll tell you if you should start it.
Right.
It's sort of like that.
Yeah, you'll enjoy this theater experience if you enjoyed the first film, and you'll be rewarded for going somewhere where it can be big and loud.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, let's go into spoilers. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about spoilers.
Spoilers.
And then we'll do that.
Miles, being Spider-Man is a sacrifice. You have a choice between saving one person and saving every world.
Send me home.
I can't do that.
I can do both. Spider-Man always.
Not always.
What about Uncle Ben?
If not for Uncle Ben, most of us wouldn't be here.
Can't stop me now! You can't run forever, kid!
I can't lose one more friend.
Miguel, this isn't what we talked about.
You knew?
I have no idea what you're doing!
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
All stations, stop Spider-Man.
I guess I'll just pay off the comment I gave just a second ago. Like what I meant by the arcs is that, you know, by the end of the film, there's closure. Gwen has closure with her father, which, you know, is a thing at the beginning of the movie. And then Miles, he doesn't have closure with his real mom because he realizes he's in the wrong universe, but he still was ready to tell her the truth. And that matters. That's a big,
that's character growth,
sign of character growth and maturity from him. So he still, it still counts, you know? And then of course, you know, the film ends and he's a prisoner in the wrong universe. And I actually really love the setup and payoff of why he even got sent there. Like with the whole DNA signature thing, like that was really clever. And consequently, I really loved the plot mechanic of you're not supposed to exist. You're not supposed to be Spider-Man. Your entire life at this point is a danger to the fabric of the multiverse. And just to be told that is like, oh, okay, that's bad.
And it's so smart because it's a little bit meta. It's like all those fanboys who are like, you're not supposed to be Spider-Man.
Right.
Only Peter can be Spider-Man.
Exactly. There was a lot of meta. I mean, which of course fits this kind of movie. The meta commentary was very strong. I almost got like I thought of that, although I was like, oh, this is kind of like a racial thing. And I was like, I mean, this is Miguel talking to my
right.
Not exactly, but.
And they said, you're the original anomaly. And I was like, look, so I'm fairly well versed in the Spider-Man lore, but not like super well versed. I don't know that the term Spider-Verse ever really existed before Miles Morales. Like I think we saw other, you know, universes, but like the Spider-Verse became a thing in the comics, I think after Miles did. I could be wrong. Someone will correct me, but like it certainly became more. It certainly has become more popularized since Miles, you know, invention. And so it feels to me like that was almost a little meta. Like you're the original anomaly. Like you're the thing. It's almost like Miguel to me. It was like a fanboy who's just mad. You know, like you're gonna break the canon. Don't do it. Oh my gosh.
It was so strange. Like that was. I mean, again, it is pretty meta, but it's not like it's distractingly meta. Like
no.
Like if you don't know what the word canon means with storytelling, you won't be distracted by how meta it feels because Dustin and I study writing and filmmaking. So like this is something we hear all the time, like the canon, like it's not canon to do that or head canon. But like the idea that they essentially said like, yes, there are common threads that happen in every Spider person's story. And that's part of what is endeared. That's part of why you can have a Gwen Stacy comic about Spider-Man that still resonates with Peter Parker fans because her situation, her story is similar. She became Spider person. She lost somebody. She can't tell anyone and she feels extremely isolated because of it. And every Spider person feels that way. That was some people's criticism of the Tom Holland Spider-Man. Like he doesn't have those story dynamics that Peter Parker usually has. And so he's a good Peter Parker, but he's just a really different Peter Parker because he has he has this support network and all these resources. And it's only at the end of his third film where he feels like he's actually character appropriate to Peter Parker from the comics. So for them to say like these events that happen to every Spider-Man are fixed points in time, basically they have to happen. That time travel concept of you can change some things, you can't change this thing. Edith Keeler has to die, or the universe ends.
Right. Which is so smart. Like it's a smart way of presenting the story that we expect, and then saying like, again, like I'm saying this ad nauseum at this point, but like Miguel is like the canon keeper. He's like the ultimate fanboy who's sitting there going, no, Uncle Ben has to die. No, Captain Stacy has to die. These are the things that have to happen. If you want to be a legitimate Spider-Man, you have to encounter these problems. And
he's mega depressed about it.
Mega depressed and bitter and and like and it's interesting then that like the whole idea is Miles pushing back on that and saying like, no, this is my story. And my story is probably like, if I have anything to say about it, it's going to be different than Peter's story. And because
I'm not Peter.
Because I'm not Peter. And like, stop holding me, again, very meta, stop holding me to the standard of Peter Parker. Allow me to be my own character and make my own stories and do my own thing. And it's, again, super smart because it's pointing the finger directly at the people like me who initially, when Miles was introduced in the comics, said, I have no interest in this. This is stupid. Like Peter is Spider-Man and you can't let someone who isn't Peter be Spider-Man, even though the hypocrisy runs deep because I had accepted Miguel O'Hara for years. And so, it's like, it's pointing a finger at people like me who believed that, but people unlike me who still hold on to that and who won't accept Miles because he's not Peter. Whereas, I think what this film does really well, and the last film, is establish Miles as a valid member of the Spider-Man family, so to speak. And get you to care about him as a character. What's great about like the PS4 Insomniac Spider-Man game introduces Miles and he's a part of Peter's story and in many ways like he can make Miles feel a little bit like a sidekick, but I'm thinking like, okay, well, if Batman's allowed to have 18,000 Robins, then like, why can't Spider-Man have a spider friend? You know what I mean? Like, why am I so against that? And I think, or was I so against that? And I think the thing was I just hadn't connected with that character yet. And what I love about these films is that they make me care about the characters, which gets to like my main thing that I love about this film is it feels like a lot of modern superhero films are so worried about building the universe that they sacrifice character, and in particular the protagonist, on the altar of world building. And so you have movies like Black Adam where it's like, we have to build this world. Who's Black Adam? I don't know. He's just a guy, but like, learn about this world. The world is cool. And some of the more recent Marvel films are doing the same thing. Like the MCU has been like, okay, post Endgame, let's figure out, what this world is. And like, so let's push the world, but we're forgetting about the characters. And what I love about this film so much is that they, essentially there's dual protagonists, but for all intents and purposes, Miles is the protagonist and they never lose sight of Miles, even in all of the Spider-Men. And even though they go to a ton of different universes, and even though there's, all of this stuff happening, which is huge and epic and, grand in scale, it never stops being a movie about Miles Morales. And that's what I loved about the film more than anything is, and I'd mentioned this earlier, those scenes where Miles just gets to sit and talk with his mom, or those scenes where Miles and his dad, like Miles is in costume, so Spider-Man is talking to Jefferson, and
as Spider-Man.
As Spider-Man about Miles. And like these
How's it
moments.
going? How's your son?
how's your son? These moments really help you understand, like, this is a story about Miles. And yes, there are other things happening, but we haven't forgotten that Miles needs an arc and that Miles has things to learn. And in many ways, this is a coming of age, just as the last one was. It's just a different age. And then even though there's essentially, like I said, dual protagonists in that Gwen is almost initially presented as the protagonist, only to, then switch and it's like, oh, it is Miles. Yeah. Gwen is also given a character arc, and although it's with less screen time and with maybe less weight to the overall story, care and attention is given to her as well. And even in so doing, they do not forget that Miles is our main protagonist. And this is a problem that movies have had lately for, across superheroes, sci-fi, like whatever. It's a common problem that writers get bogged down in the world, and then they get bogged down in side characters. And all the while our protagonist is just, a guy, and you don't feel like you know him, and you don't really, like, you root for him because you're supposed to, not because you want to,
because his face is on the poster.
Yeah, exactly. And this is completely different. And I think it's a huge success that, essentially the film ends with Miles, reclaiming his power in the situation against Miguel, and like, using the things he's learned, the palm technique, whatever else, using these things to, turn the tide in his favor. And then, like you said, the moment with his mother at the end, the alternate mother, these are big moments of character growth. And that's what I love most about this film.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
So something that I won't even say dislike, but something I think the film could have done better is I think the cliffhanger ending could have been handled better for me. So maybe I was paying too much attention, or maybe I was, whatever, maybe it's supposed to be this obvious, but like, he's going to the wrong universe. He's not going to go to his universe. And this because you see, okay. So as he like goes, he's like, he's in the ghost spider, whatever mode, and he's like entering on the computer and says Earth 42, and immediately I go, oh, okay, so he's going to Earth 42, but we've never established that his Earth is 42. So I'm like, and we know that the spider that bit him was 42, right? And we know that that's from a different universe. So immediately I'm like, okay, so he's going to a different universe. And
well, it's hiding. It's hiding in plain sight, because like you see 42. If you remember, the spider in the first film had 42, but then they show it to you again in this film just to remind you the spider had a 42 on it. So you see 42, and you're like, oh, 42. That's his universe, 42. And so you're told he'd go into 42, but what you are forgetting, if you are me, is that a few scenes earlier, he said, or the scene earlier, Miguel's like, the spider that bit you wasn't even from your universe. It was from a different one. Yeah. And so it's like, if you remember that sentence and that number, then you look and go, oh no. And of course them saying like, it's going to scan your DNA. It's going to send you the universe based on your molecules. Yep. But it's, so I didn't put all those pieces together at the same time.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's what I was talking about when I said something that, was carried over from the first film that has to have been intentional. Yes. Is that spider glitched in the first film. Yes. And it's like, oh, I never even thought about fact that it glitched.
That's right. But when him and Aaron walk away, it glitches.
It glitches. And you're like, oh, it's from a different universe. Yeah. Like, yo, I never thought about this. But yeah, man. So he goes to this other universe. And I feel like the moment to end it is, Gwen and Miguel are after him, and he goes into the house, and then they come up on it. And there's like a really long moment of him, like, hemming and hawing, and then talking to his mom and blah, blah, blah. And they're outside the window, and it's like, okay, come on, I already know where this is going. I feel like if you sped that up and yes, the mom thing is important, but you almost like can end it before she enters, or have her enter and be visibly different, or have some sort of like indication of like, oh, this is the wrong universe, then you end it there on the shock of I'm in the wrong place. And you end it with like Gwen opening the window and it's the wrong place. You know, and that's where I thought it was going to end. And it didn't. It kept going. Again, it's important to have this moment with a mom. So maybe like you can end it there. That's option one. Option two is you end it after his moment with his mother and just have her say something a little more like pointed and cliffhangery, okay, you're being weird, you know, come on, it's time for something that makes no sense in our universe. Like, it's time for the blue elephant to do the dance. And you're like, what? You know, and you know, just something that you're like, I don't know what this means. And Miles was like, I don't know what this means. And then the realization of I'm in the wrong place. But then it's like, okay, so that's option two. But option number three is don't have anybody figure out that like Miles is in the wrong place. And Miles says this all to mom. And we're all like, oh yeah, sweet moment. And then Uncle Aaron walks in and then you end it. And it's like, oh, that's where you end it. But then you end it. There's like another cliffhanger. Oh, realization that dad is dead and his mural is painted on the thing. And then there's another realization that, oh, now I'm captured and you know, I'm Prowler. And so there's like all of these moments where I feel like all of them are valid cliffhangers. And so to me, it ended like a little bit tedious where I kept like, cause I knew like, okay, this is it. Okay. No, that's not it. Okay. This is it. No, that's not it. Oh, Uncle Aaron. No, that's not it. Oh, his dad. Oh, that's not it. And so for me, maybe I was just looking for the ending. Sure. I don't think I was like, I wanted it to keep going.
Well, yeah.
But like, you know, everyone always complains about Return of the King having 8 million endings.
Right.
And I've never felt like that. I felt like that in this. I was like, there's like 8 places to end this movie. And they just like kept dragging it out. And I felt like to me, the least interesting ending of all of those endings is Miles's Prowler. And so, because I don't need another antagonist, I just need Miles to like be out of place, essentially.
And you could have saved that for the beginning of the. I mean, that'd be a really fun way to kick off the next movie. Like that first scene, you find out, oh, Miles is the Prowler in this universe. Like it's it's nothing that you have to sit with for 9 months that makes it any better. You know, You just have Aaron capture him. You know, he's just tied to the thing, and Aaron's got him, and you're like, oh man, are you bad here too? You know,
Or you just start it with them like talking and all the while Uncle Aaron's becoming more and more convinced that like this isn't my Miles.
Right.
You know, like Miles just can't say the right things and do the right things. And then the Prowler shows up, you know, or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, all that to say, like, this is not a critique of the film in that, like, I hate this film because of this, or I hate this moment. It's just me, like, as a story guy going, like, I would have ended it in a different place. Because to me, the least interesting ending to this movie is this new element. The most interesting ending to this movie is ending it in a way that was set up in this film. Which is to say, like, I'm in the wrong universe. How am I ever going to get home?
Yeah.
That's the more impactful ending to me. Or you end it with him like pouring his heart out to his mom, right? Like, I'm Spider-Man, all of this stuff. And then she just goes, who are you?
Yeah. Yeah. It could be that.
And
too.
Like, to me, the way more impactful because we've had this big moment of mom saying like, I love this little boy and I cared for this little boy and blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, she doesn't even know him.
Presumably it's important that that Miles still lives in that universe because presumably Aaron is important, but you could have, I think if I were to do my version of that, she'd be like outside his room and she hears him and she's like ironing or something like that, or something where her back is turned, but she's like, okay, well, what do you want to talk about? You know, she's busy doing stuff. And, you know, and then when she finally turns around, she has like an eye patch or something. And she's like
an eye patch and a big beard and a scar.
Just some noticeable change where she's like, you know, where she's like, oh, and just something, I don't know. I sort of agree, but I don't know. I'll have to wait till that's one of those things that I got to wait on for the third film for them to see how they begin it and how important it was, because then I can go, oh, you didn't even need that scene then, or I would have saved that for the next one or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I get, that's a fair point. Depending on how the next movie starts, like if the movie starts and Miles is just sort of like evil Miles is in the one scene and they like chase him off Earth 42 and he goes somewhere else and we never see him again, then it's like, oh, okay, so that cliffhanger didn't really amount to much, right?
Yeah.
But then if he becomes like the big bad of the next movie, it's like, oh, okay, well then sure, it like redeems that a little bit maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is going to depend on where that goes.
What did you make of the switching gears a little bit, just speaking of the Prowler, what do you think of the use of all the live action films here? Like all the live action elements? Yeah,
so we saw clips of Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Donald Glover.
Yeah, we had Donald Glover in the movie.
Yes,
yeah,
correct. Yeah. I thought it was an interesting choice because, they also mention Tom Holland.
Well, the writers insist that was not a reference to Tom Holland, the whole Doctor Strange thing.
Yeah.
They say it's not. It's some...
It has to be.
They said, I'll find it. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, but I think it's an interesting choice because obviously there's also like, the 70s live action Spider-Man, and then there's the live action Japanese Spider-Man. So there's more to mine there, but like, I mean, it's interesting. You can do anything with it. But I oddly hope they don't really do much more with it. Like, I feel like it should, okay, it's a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah, it's more, I feel like that's more fun. And it's just like, well, we're Sony. We have the rights to all these images and that we can totally use them. Yeah, like it'd be fun to have Donald Glover. Like people might forget that he was I don't even know Aaron's last name, but that he was Uncle Aaron and
Aaron Davis. Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron Davis. People, the fact that Miles was referenced even in that film. He says he has a nephew that lives around that neighborhood. So Miles canonically exists in the MCU.
Correct.
And people were like really excited about that.
Yeah.
And there's still potential to use that if they wanted to.
They totally could.
The fact that Sony decided like, let's call Donald Glover, that would be really cool. Like there's more in there than, I don't know. I think that shows like, I mean, what are the odds that people know that? I guess maybe they just figured people recognize him. So even if they don't know this connection we're making, like, oh, there's Donald Glover.
Right, exactly.
But a lot of us are like, whoa, like that's a deep pull, It
is. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but, I hope it's more just kind of Easter eggy than anything else. To me, what was a cool Easter egg was you see this moment where you have, Andrew Garfield crying over Captain Stacy in the first Amazing Spider-Man. But in this like long line of other Spider-Mans who have lost captains that are close to them, there's an extended amount of screen time for the Spectacular Spider-Man and Captain Stacy. This did not happen in the series. So this is confirming a detail that happens post-series, which is interesting to me. Like Captain Stacy did not die in either of the two seasons of Spectacular Spider-Man. So I think they said like that was going to happen in the third season before it was canceled. So it's like we're now seeing a clip from a show that never happened, or that we never got to see, which is kind of interesting. Then because it also, the fact that Spectacular Spider-Man is there also lends to this idea that like, oh, the Spectacular Spider-Man has been on a bunch of other adventures and eventually became, recruited by this task force and lives in this weird dimension with Miguel O'Hara, or at least visits there.
Right.
But it also raises the question, like, so, does Tobey Maguire know about that? Did he get recruited? You know what I mean? Or is it only the animated ones that get recruited? So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but
yeah, I don't know. I thought it was. I thought it was pretty fun. I mean, like it seemed like one of those things. Like that's better. It's better to have that than to not have it. And for someone to go, what about the live action stuff? Like it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But very much still sticking to like, all right, but this is an animated film. We're not going to have live action people. And so as such, like no one in my theater reacted to the Mrs. Chen joke.
Not a single person.
I didn't know who that was. I had to look at it later. I had to go to Wikipedia.
Have you seen the Venom movies?
I've seen the first Venom, and I desperately want my time back because I hated it so much. But apparently, not only is Mrs. Chen in both of the films, she's in like a web series.
Oh, for real?
There's like a web series. So Mrs. Chen is like a thing. And so that was meant to be a big, like, hey, got Mrs. Chen. I knew she was somebody because he was like, you act like this happens. Weird things happen all the time. And I was like my theater was just quiet. No one laughed. I was like, what is this?
Yeah,
Janice?
I'm sure no one knew. Janice? There was a ton of kids in my theater, and presumably none of them have seen Venom.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Good Lord. It's the inherent problem of the Venom movies. Like, you're going to have a whole bunch of people in your target demo who don't know who any of these people are. So,
right.
Anyways, I never saw a second Venom because I just thought it looked like shit.
The second Venom is the most forgettable, pointless, stupid. Never mind. That's a different review for a different day.
Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this. Really, I feel tapped out on my thoughts on it. I very much, like I said, I think this is teed up to be the best Spider-Man trilogy made. You know, and it's going to be among the best comic book trilogies made. Yeah. You know, like, and that just depends on your taste. Like, you know. Sure. I mean, but the Guardians films is a great trilogy for people, and then the Raimi Spider-Man films and the Nolan Batman films, and it's really important for trilogies to be good, or you kind of lose the will to watch any of them. Yeah, so I'm proud of what they've accomplished here with these, and it's really great for animation. It's good for Sony. It's, you know, like, we talk a lot of shit about Sony because they make so many boneheaded decisions as a studio, especially as it relates to their Spider-Man content. Yeah. And all they really needed to do was this. They just needed to go, we're going to do a different thing with Miles Morales, with a different Spider-Man. Like, we're going to stop messing with Peter Parker so much because everyone has feelings about it. And we got this Marvel stuff going on. It was the perfect opportunity once they did. And I imagine, I just wonder if that had anything to do with it. Like, once they decided that Spider-Man was going to be in the Marvel films and they're going to cast Tom Holland, and okay, it's 2016. And then they're like, all right, we still want to do our own Spider-Man thing, damn it. Like, what can we do? And they're like, someone in the back of the room just shouted, I've been saying for years we need to do Miles Morales. And they finally said, okay, let's do Miles Morales. And we'll do it animated. And someone else said, and it should be animated. And they go, okay, animated, Miles Morales, go write that. And someone came back with a baller pitch, and they're like, holy shit, this is great. Yeah, let's do this. And this will be the thing that, like, people think of when they think of Sony again. And Sony's very good. Aside from Spider-Man, Sony makes really great, and Ghostbusters and a few other key things revealed in their hacks. Sony, nonetheless, maintains a reputation as a studio of being pretty fucking cool. With their properties and the way they treat their creators. So so I feel like so first of all, again, love this movie, think it's great, really excited for Beyond the Spider-Verse. I think, like, in terms of what do I want from the potential last film in this trilogy, and, you know, I do think it should end. I think this should be Beyond should be the last film, finish up the story. What I'd like to see, I think, is, like, the idea that there are a lot of other Spider-Man out there that are not a part of this task force or whatever, that would be on Miles' side. And so I would love to see more Spider-Man to help, because, like, this ends with Gwen kind of creating her own little spider team, right? Of people from the first film and from this one. There's got to be more out there. And what I would love to see is, like, you know,
more versions of Peter who, you know, would agree with Miles and want to fight with him against Miguel O'Hara's posse. And I think like an all-out spider war would be really cool. And again, like, I think Peter B. Parker is great. And I do really like him. I think he's underutilized in this film.
Yeah. I wanted to see more of him.
Yeah. But understandably, like, this is Miles' story. And I wouldn't wish that there's like more Peter Parkers show up in the next one and take Miles', you know, story away from him. That's certainly not what I want. I want it to still be Miles' story, but I have to believe that there are more Peter Parkers out there that would side with Miles, and I would love to see more heroic Peter Parkers that would stand for what Miles is standing for.
Yeah.
And the idea that, like, you know, if it's possible to save one person, we should try. Right.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea of like, they hit on it here of like, if you could save Uncle Ben, are you telling me you wouldn't do that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that would be, I think that's something worth mining. And the fact that they bring it up here makes me think they might be interested in mining it. So I would love to see some of that, but the thing that I want most from Beyond the Spider-Verse is I want them to continue to be Miles' story.
Yeah.
Like, I want this to be his story with Gwen, and, you know, let them have their moment. I don't want Peter to swing in and like become the central focus. I don't want Tom Holland to show up at the end and animated or live action and be like, hey, I'm going to save the day now. I don't want any of that. I want this to be Miles' story.
Yeah.
And I think that they'll be true to that.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I can't wait.
I'm too.
And I think that these are definitely rewatchable. It goes on my rewatchable list, where it's just, there's so many layers, and it moves so quick, and so much art to admire here. So I
sure.
Great movie.
The last thing I'll say, just to echo my Letterboxd review. When I saw Raimi's Spider-Man, the first one, in theaters as a kid, I ran out of that theater and went. It was in a mall, so I went down the escalator into the Borders bookstore and bought a Spider-Man encyclopedia, and I read that thing cover to cover so many times. It was one of those like old encyclopedias that was like, here's every gadget he's ever used. Here's every character, every villain, every ally, every whatever. And it's like, I just read all those pages and like traced over the art and like loved everything about it. When I saw Donner's Superman, I saw that on the small screen at home on, you know, DVD or whatever, VHS, VHS probably. And I loved it. And I immediately went out and bought Superman comics and like, you know, loved that. When Nolan's Batman came out, of course I was already a Batman fan because of Batman the Animated Series, but when Nolan's Batman came out, it reinvigorated in me like this love for Batman. I went out, bought a ton of comics and like just loved Batman. It was in like this huge Batman mood. I'm older now, so it doesn't hit the same way.
Sure.
But there's a little bit of that in this movie, where when it ended, I had this desire to go buy Miles Morales comics. I had the desire to go learn more about him. I had the desire to read more Spider-Man, you know, Peter, Gwen, all of it. And just that desire came back, and it has, I think it probably has been since Nolan's Batman that I've felt that way. So again, not to say like, you know, I'm actually going to go out and buy a bunch of comic books, but there's certainly a little bit of that feeling. And so it was really awesome to leave the theater and feel a little bit pumped. And like, if I had been 11 years old, I totally would have been running through those corridors at that theater, like thinking, like mind just like going crazy about like, what if I was on top of the Empire State Building and I'm jumping off, and, you know, like that's totally where I would have been. So now as a 34-year-old, I'm certainly, you know, more subdued about it, but like, yeah, totally lit that fire a little bit. And that was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
All right. That's gonna be it for Spider-Man.
Yay!
Go see it, everybody. Or I guess if you're at this point, you've seen it. Congratulations. Go you. Go us.
Go see it again.
Yeah, go see it again.
If you have the time in the capital, go see it again.
The Capitol.
The capital.
All right, everybody.
Bye.